Avengers Age of Ultron is once again written and directed by Joss Whedon and again stars Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, and Samuel L. Jackson, with new additions from Elizabeth Olsen, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Paul Bettany as Vision, and James Spader as Ultron. Now, I remember when this movie was coming out, and of course, I was excited because I get excited for every single Marvel movie, no matter what they are. People were saying, oh my god, this is going to change the MCU forever, Avengers are going to die, nothing's going to be the same. Well, none of that really happened. And that isn't a bad thing. I honestly think that people's expectations for this movie were a little too high. Some were anticipating it being better than the first one, which I don't think it was ever going to happen. Joss Whedon came on board to direct a sequel because he wanted to explore different things with characters. He wanted to go further into, okay, what do heroes actually fight for? What do they have at the end of the day? It's not just always action, action, action. There has to be something else. And that leads into the middle of this movie, exploring, oh look, Hawkeye has a family, and Captain America is still stuck between worlds. Natasha and Bruce have a relationship. Tony Stark feels completely alone. Thor is kind of just there, I guess, but there is something behind these heroes just coming in and saving the world. There has to be something more. He's still a very quippy writer. He loves one-liners. He loves a lot of recurring jokes throughout the movie. And when it goes into those ideas, when it is the Joss Whedon movie, I think it's the best. When this movie did come out, I loved it. And I was very perplexed by how disappointed people were with it. Some people, to this day even, still hate this movie just because it wasn't what they expected, which is a tale as old as time now. I still defend Bruce and Natasha's relationship. I think that it is incredibly emotionally powerful. It feels real. The idea of, hey, look, Natasha is not just this cool, badass spy. There is a little bit more to her. The fact that she feels like she can't connect with anybody. And Bruce Banner knows that he cannot, because if he does, then the Hulk comes out. So they are stuck in this incredible connection that also cannot last. And that's kind of devastating in a sense. When Ultron has his great moments, when you first see him, and pretty much any dialogue scene he has with other characters, I love him. Ultron was never going to be this incredibly menacing, super evil bad guy, because that's exactly what we got with Malekith from Thor: The Dark World or Ronan from Guardians of the Galaxy, who are meant to be these super evil characters but feel incredibly boring. Ultron is more than that. He is evil Tony Stark. He's got this incredibly eccentric personality, and he'll make a couple of jokes, but he also has this incredibly cynical worldview that he might not be entirely wrong about. When he has that relationship with Vision, I wanted more from that. What we got was great, but I wanted to go further into how Vision, as he says, is on the side of life, and Ultron is against life, but Vision doesn't want to destroy Ultron because he thinks that he's unique. One of my absolute favorite scenes in this entire movie, and in fact, probably one of my most favorite moments in the entire MCU, is the final moments of Ultron, where he faces off against Vision. And it's not some massive fight that they have. It's just two characters having a conversation with each other about what humanity means.
There is grace in their failings. I think you missed that.
They're doomed.
Yes. But a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts. It's a privilege to be among them.
You're unbearably naive.
Well, I was born yesterday.
Hulk vs. Hulkbuster is absolutely amazing, and pretty much everything that I ever wanted out of a Hulk vs. Hulkbuster sequence.
That's not going away anytime soon.
And some of the final battles still really, really works. Particularly Hawkeye's scene with Scarlet Witch, which is just so Joss Whedon. The idea of, if you go out that door, you're an Avenger, but also,
the city's flying. We're fighting an army of robots. And I have a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense.
that is one of the MCU's best scenes. Top 10 for sure. There are some problems that I see with this movie that I didn't see at first. This movie doesn't feel like an Avengers movie. It feels like another Marvel movie. It feels like another building block instead of a culmination or an event thing, something that feels so super important. That's what the first Avengers was. That was the culmination of phase 1. Look, we have the Avengers together. How amazing is that? We can finally do it. Age of Ultron doesn't feel like that. It just feels like another edition. And that's because Marvel wanted to make it another edition. They wanted to set up, okay, these things and Infinity Stones. So there's just constant setup with not any real feeling of this needs to happen. The biggest problem I have with the movie is pacing. It feels overstuffed because it keeps going from slow to quick, slow and quick, slow scene, quick scene, action scene, but then reflection. And it doesn't have a consistent way through. So everything that happens just feels crammed in at the last minute. Instead, in the first Avengers, a lot happens, but it feels like it has this natural pace. It keeps going because of this. That's something that I pointed out in my review of it. Age of Ultron just has and then storytelling, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, because Joss Whedon, as he said multiple times in the years since,
in the second one, the job just got harder. Oh, I have all these restrictions, but I also have all these guidelines.
It shows that Joss Whedon wasn't working on all cylinders that he could be. There are parts of this movie that could have been streamlined or completely cut out. I don't think we needed War Machine to come in and be part of the whole thing. It just feels tacked on. It feels like, oh look, we can have him here. I guess, sure, why not? And the dumbest part of this whole movie, which is just screaming of a studio note, something that could have been completely cut out, was Thor's bath sequence, whatever it is. Him having a vision about the Infinity Stones, which is just set up for bloody Infinity War and Thanos. But it's like, we got that. We were already aware of what the Infinity Stones were. There was a much more natural way for the Avengers to be aware of the threat of the Infinity Gauntlet and everything that's going to happen later, just not in the way that this movie explored it. There's also the typical Marvel problem of cinematography and music. I pointed out how in the first Avengers, the cinematography is pretty solid. I love the aspect ratio, but some of the angles can feel really unnecessary. I think that was just Joss Whedon kind of experimenting with, oh look, we got this crazy new camera and we can do this and this and this. He still does it in this movie, and I don't know why. It's kind of like Battlefield Earth, where everything is just shot on Dutch angles because, oh look, this looks visually interesting, but it's not. It's kind of jarring. There's a lot of that in this movie. There's a lot of just, oh look, we can tilt the camera this way and then this way, and then we can turn it on its side, but then have the image the same way. It's like, okay, we don't need to do that though. Music comes into it, and I love Danny Elfman, but I don't get a sense that he had an actual handprint on this movie. It doesn't feel like his score. It feels like Brian Tyler. And honestly, Brian Tyler's Marvel music sucks. Here in Age of Ultron, it's overblown music that for some reason is being really toned down. And that also leads into problems I have with the sound mixing. Just every part of the sound for this movie is odd. We have these massive triumphant moments. We have another 360 shot of all the Avengers fighting Ultron's big army, but it doesn't feel important. It doesn't feel triumphant anymore. It feels kind of just like, oh, okay, this is happening. And that's not because we don't care about what's happening in the movie. I think it's because of the music. Because we can't hear that triumphant score coming in. The 360 shot from the first Avengers worked because we had Alan Silvestri's almost perfect score underline everything. Even the visual effects for this movie don't hold up. In fact, in the first 10 minutes alone, there are some parts of it that are just downright terrible and kind of lazy. It shows that nobody looked back on it and said, maybe we shouldn't do it that particular way. Maybe we should give this a little bit more rendering time so that way it doesn't look like Thor is randomly just inserting his hands into an enemy's body. This movie isn't as underrated as I once thought it was. I can see where people were incredibly disappointed. There's still some stuff that I absolutely love. Some things in this movie that are still my favorite parts of the entire MCU. Age of Ultron just doesn't really feel as genuine. It doesn't have that strong beating heart that the first Avengers did, because it's just a product of so many different factors, kind of almost tearing it apart so that way it doesn't feel as important as most of the other great Marvel movies. Joss Whedon was making a more personal movie. Marvel wanted just another Marvel movie to set up new things, and fans wanted this super important thing that's going to change the Marvel universe and be better than the first Avengers movie. But Age of Ultron doesn't do enough of any of those. I don't think it's as great as I once thought it is, which can be a little disappointing, so I can see where people are coming from with that, but I still do really like a lot of this movie. I'll still enjoy going back and seeing the things that I love, and it did give me some of my favorite characters for the rest of the MCU, and in the end, I'll say that Avengers Age of Ultron is...
Sorry, Marge. I'm afraid this gets my lowest rating ever. 7 thumbs up.
So Avengers Age of Ultron, have you seen it? Have you not seen it? What did you think about this review? Let me know in the comments below. Get excited because so soon I'm seeing Avengers Infinity War like the rest of the world. I cannot wait. Stay tuned for my review of that. And if you want more Mr. Movies, click the channel link coming up right here. And thanks for watching.